This is the Court Leader's Advantage, a podcast series for court professionals and by court professionals. Brought to you by thecourtleader.net and in cooperation with NACM, the National Association for Court Management. Civil case filings per capita have been declining nationally for decades. John Greacen and Alan Carlson explained this in their book, What's Happening to State Trial Court Civil Filings? The absolute number of civil filings in state courts has increased somewhat. However, overall filings has not kept pace with the population growth and have been on a long-term decline. Meanwhile, the National Center for State Courts' annual State of the State Courts poll reported that public trust and confidence in state courts rose in 2024 to 63%. However, this figure has stagnated between 60 and 64% over the last 4 years. These troubling numbers raise some important questions. How are people resolving their disputes? Are they in fact resolving them at all? One thing is certain, more and more people are not turning to the courts, the traditional venue for peaceably resolving conflict. And what can we do about this trend? How can we encourage the public to once again rely on America's courts to address their issues? I'm Pete Kiefer, and welcome to the Court Leader's Advantage podcast series. This month, we'll explore how Arizona is tackling the challenge of access to justice. The state Supreme Court's Access to Justice Committee has been working to rebuild public trust and encourage people to return to the courts as a reliable resource for resolving their disputes. Here to discuss this issue are the Honorable Samuel A. Thumma, Judge of the Arizona Court of Appeals, Mr. Kip Anderson, Court Administrator for the Mojave County Superior Court in Kingman, Arizona, and Dr. Kevin Ruegg, Chief Executive Officer for the Arizona Bar Foundation. Judge Thumma is Chair of the Arizona Access to Justice Committee. Both Dr. Ruegg and Kip Anderson are members of that committee. Thank you all for joining today's podcast. In the introduction, I briefly outlined some of the challenges the Access to Justice Committee is working to address. Could you expand on the crisis that we're facing and share more details about the issues at hand? Judge Thumma?
Arizona's Commission on Access to Justice is a court-centered commission. There are all sorts of different types of commissions around the country. We don't allocate money. We don't fund things. We get folks together as an information exchange to try to encourage all of us to do better for those most in need. Arizona has extraordinary diversity and distance. Diversity, the court that I serve on, we take appeals from Maricopa County Superior Court, fourth largest trial court in the country. We also take appeals from La Paz, where there are about 18,000 people and one judge. There are extraordinary distances between population bases. Arizona is a very, very large state, larger than about 35 other states geographically. Again, with significant Native American population, tribes, and nations to account for digital divides that we see as we all begin to and continue to focus more and more on technology. Legal deserts, where there may be one or fewer lawyers to be able to help. Arizona's response, which we'll talk about in a little bit, has focused not only on enhancing and expanding the reach and the capacity for lawyers to provide legal services to those most in need, but also non-lawyers to provide services for most in need. And I'm excited and delighted about both of those and all the work that we're able to do and recognizing their enormous needs that are going unmet.
Kevin Ruegg?
I would like to venture to say, while I'm not in any way minimizing the crisis, I believe that because of the Access to Justice Commissions across the nation, and particularly under the leadership of Judge Thumma here in Arizona, we're becoming more aware of that need. And we're actually starting to have reporting on it and to monitor it. So it may be a good thing that we're in a crisis because we're acknowledging it now. I can tell you, though, that it is serious. We recently completed, by the Arizona Bar Foundation, hired a company to complete an Arizona legal needs study. And they found that about 50% of the people who self-identified that they had a legal problem did not get any help. Most of them said, the majority of that 50% said that the reason is they didn't know where to go. Other reasons were they couldn't afford it. The other is they didn't know where to begin. So we do have a serious crisis. I can also tell you that that study reported that 70% of all those people surveyed have their legal problems still ongoing. They're still living with it. The first primary need, which I thought was very sad because it's a right that everybody can relate to, the highest need was to protect their income and to avoid unfair debt. I thought that was really telling. I also, and the last thing that I'd want to say, when you talked about not trusting the courts, of those responding to the survey, 21%, around 20% said that they do not trust government programs or government officials. And I thought that again shows that because we're not answering them with an accessible, equal, consistent way to their personal needs.
Can you sketch out some of the various initiatives the committee is engaged in to enhance access? Judge Thumma?
Sure. Let me highlight just a few, and it's a team effort for sure, as Kevin pointed out. And a real significant component of that is what the Bar Foundation is and does. We have many needs, but I would be very sad to think about what Arizona would look like without the Bar Foundation and their support. Some innovation that we're working on right now includes community justice worker service delivery models, both lawyer supervised advocates who are non-lawyers helping participants in proceedings, and non-lawyer supervised lawyer mentor groups in Arizona that are expanding their reach as well. Arizona's had both. Actually, the legal advocates, the non-lawyer supervised, for far longer than the legal supervised. Our three legal services corporation entities got together last December and got in place an administrative order for their lawyer supervised crew. But we put a foundation in place through a Code of Judicial Administration section that authorizes both, regulates both, to build on as we go forward. The commission, another point, just got probably 20 comments in on rule change petitions that are pending before our court, reflecting our views on what could or would or might not enhance access to justice. We're continuing with our education and training programs throughout the state, trying to learn more. And then let me focus on three things that I'm particularly wanting to focus on as we go along this year, this calendar year. One is to see if we can use generative AI to enhance a court process. Court rules always get more complicated. I want to see if we can buck that trend and see if we can simplify a rule set, make a rule set more easily read and understood by individuals who are largely self-represented litigants, to see if we can enhance the process, and then to see if we can evaluate whether we're succeeding or not, what we're going to track. Two other things briefly. I want us to do a self-represented litigant survey. We talk a lot about self-represented litigants. We work a lot to try to help the experience better for self-represented litigants. In the past, we've surveyed the public, we've surveyed the branch, we've surveyed the bench, as well as lawyers. We hope to repeat the survey of the bench and repeat the survey of lawyers this summer. But we also want to ask self-represented litigants what they're about their experience. We'll get harsh medicine, we will, but we'll learn things along the way. And I want to see what we can do on that front. And then finally, I would like to get, and I have one person who's joined this group already, I'd like to get a focus group of about 25 former self-represented litigants who aren't so disabused of the system, aren't so disappointed with the process, that they'll talk to us, that we can use as a sounding board when we look to enhance forms, when we look to update a portal, when we look to try a new system or a new new approach to self-represented litigation to actually ask the self-represented litigants for their input. A lot of work to be done for sure, but those are some of the things that we have underway today.
Kip Anderson?
Since I've been on the commission, one of the things that I've gotten involved in, Judge Thumb has a lot of subcommittees, and one of the subcommittees is the Public Information and Messaging Work Group that I've been on it for quite a while. I'm currently chairing it. Thanks, Judge Thumb. But it's a nice opportunity. We create, or at least we're in the works of helping create media plans to share. Kevin and her group have done marvelous things in that area, but reaching out to various legal services groups that are throughout the state of Arizona. We have wonderful legal services groups. Here in our area, the Mojave County area, we work with Community Legal Services. And so we have developed a strong relationship with them, and they help us put together programs that we bring into the courthouse. And that's been very helpful and been an important tool for us. We reach out to build positive connections with our community groups. I know down in Maricopa, they do a lot of, they'll meet with the bar associations and they'll bring in and have pizza days and where they can promote and encourage local attorneys to get involved in pro bono work, and that's been helpful. There's a lot of legal clinics that go on, a lot of good work. I know in some of the other questions we're going to talk about, we might get into a little more detail on that. Most recently, one of the, Judge Thumma mentioned this, is the Authorized Community Justice Worker and the Certified Community Legal Service Advocate. There's another subgroup that's working on a video to help explain that. And then our group, the Public Information Group, will then help promote that. And those videos get posted on the Supreme Court webpage, and they're out there. So those have been very helpful. So those are just some of the things we're doing right now.
This is an initiative of the commission that is 10 years old now. So it's right when we started, and it is azcourthelp.org. And Sam, I'm going to let you follow up with it, but it is an amazing website. And currently, there are over 800,000 unique visitors that come to azcourthelp.org, which is primarily, as Judge Thumma had said, targeting, as we do so often, self-represented litigants.
I just wanted to echo what both Kevin and Kip are doing, and they're thought leaders on the commission for sure. And one of the things that I was so impressed with and remain so impressed with is the reach that AZ Court Help provides. Kevin, you mentioned more than 800,000 unique users. Collectively, with the website platforms that we list in our annual report, about 2 million, nearly 2 million people have been helped by accessing online legal resources above and beyond representation by legal services providers for those most in need. When people are in hurt, when they're looking for help, a lot of times, no matter what, they're going to go to the web. And, Arizona's been terrifically good at providing resources that are really helpful, that are tracked. And not only that, but then the queries that are used, the questions that are asked within that are tracked. And we learn a whole bunch from doing that. And I tip my hat to those efforts.
Now, you've mentioned a number of impressive programs underway. But how do you get the word out that this assistance is available? For example, if I wanted my criminal record expunged so I can apply to nursing school, how would I learn about the resources available to me? Kip?
Peter, we're not going to expunge your record. Sorry, we can't help you out. But if somebody's coming in, yes, their first line of contact is going to be our clerk's office, right? People come into the courthouse, they go right to the clerk's office. Our clerks can provide information typically on how to seal records, but they also, you can expunge any marijuana violations, you can expunge your juvenile records, but typically those go over to our self-help centers, our law libraries, and they have packets, and we have all that information out on our websites as well. And then going back to what Kevin mentioned on the AZ Court Help, we tie all those together, the Supreme Court's webpage, AZ Court Help, and our local web pages. So those forms are out there, those packets of forms. So they can track it, they can pull that information down. And then our community legal services, or sometimes some of the bigger courts have some advocates in the courthouses. They can help give them a little more direction and guidance on how to fill out those forms and get them completed. Our law libraries, particularly here in Mojave, she can't really give out too much legal advice, but she can certainly point them in the right direction. And that's where tying into all these resources online is very helpful.
Kevin?
This question, it made me think, how well a job are we doing if 50% didn't even get help? So I typed in expungement Arizona into the Google machine, as my husband would say. And I was so grateful for our courts because, as Kip just referenced, they've been able to get right to the top. And they even in a lot of situations beat out the placement of professional lawyers, which I always want people to get the basic information first before they get an advertisement. I then typed in expungement Arizona free, and there Arizona came up. And so Arizona court help, AZ court help came up. So I was grateful for that AZ court help is rising to the top. And that really goes to what I wanted to focus on, which is that we try very hard to go where the people are at. We use a lot of social media platforms. I'm proud of our state bar because they're doing their Access to Justice Committee is doing a project called Connect the Connectors. And they're in the process of having a messaging that will go out into the communities, the people that they're reaching. And what Sam, or Judge Thumma, helped us codify, and Justice Timmer's really leading the way on, is our community justice workers. And I believe they are going to be a huge source for connecting the connectors, because everybody goes in to get food. They go into a medical clinic. They go in for their social service or their foster care meetings. And if we can have our outreach so that community justice workers are trained, not only in their specific area of the law, but in knowing where the resources are, we really are going to try to help attack that problem.
Following up on Kevin, again, back to AZ Court Help. They also put on monthly webinars. Coming up this week, we have an eviction and landlord-tenant clinic. So that's free. People can join on. We publicize it in all our law libraries. Later in the month, there's one on Bankruptcy 101. So every month they're putting them on, and some of them are provided by our legal service providers, and some of them are done by attorneys who want to do pro bono work. So great resource for people.
Those wouldn't have been done except for our law librarians. They actually are the one, and the Flagstaff Court, Coconino Court, is the one leading that effort, and we get to help coordinate it.
Now, you were committee partners with the Four Corners Access to Justice Committee. How are that committee's issues different from yours? Judge Thumma?
Sure, and actually, it was something that started by accident, right? So I became chair of our commission, Arizona's Commission on Access to Justice, in 2021. And as I've said before, I really wasn't out of central casting to become chair of it. So I wanted to learn, and I was hungry to learn, and I still am, to learn as much as I can. And unlike any other thing I've wrestled with in the law, I think, I've quickly come to learn that access to justice, there's no one thing that's going to fix everything for everybody. Even if someone was going to write an infinitely large check to us, and nobody wants to do that, right? So it's a lot of things that could be construed as little things, but they're not. I mean, if you help one person, I suppose you could view that as being a little thing, but that's awfully big for that one person. So I looked around and I thought, all right, there's an annual meeting that's fabulous of Access to Justice Commission chairs each October, and I go to it and I learn from it a great deal from our peers. But there's wild divergence in how commissions are set up, and I thought, well, how about the Four Corners commissions? Why don't we just sort of chat? And I knew one of the co-chairs in Utah and the chair then in New Mexico, and I got introductions to folks in Colorado. And so for the past 3 years or so, once a quarter, we get together and talk for maybe 90 minutes on a Teams platform, all remotely. We've met once or twice in person, just sort of by accident when we were in other conferences. But we share common needs, we share common challenges, we share populations in tribal land especially. But we have our own unique opportunities too, and each commission builds and focuses and innovates in a different way. So it's such a rich, rewarding information exchange that was built out of paper clips and glue and just wanting to get to know each other. And we've developed trust over time where we can share both successes, which is glorious, but also things that maybe didn't work so well. And that at times is worth the price of admission, actually worth more than what can happen. But you need trust to make that happen. And we've developed that. And I so look forward to those meetings. Like I said, they're informal. Typically, we don't have any agenda item. We just kind of go around the room allocating to each state. And I have found them unbelievably helpful. And they're a highlight of my day or week, honestly, when we have those meetings.
Kevin?
Well, I'm very proud of what Judge Thumma came up with and started, because fortunately for us, this good idea is contagious. And as the chairs start talking and sharing and trusting, so did the bar foundations. So did more so the commission staff and the legal aid entities, because we all knew there was a trust environment created. I also can say that the chairs of each of the four corners commissions have represented those four corners throughout the nation, sharing their ideas, showing the example, and I believe have really led to a further definition of what a legal desert is. And it's being talked about more and more, that people are recognizing that we have to address the legal deserts.
I'm very intrigued by the community-based justice service delivery model. Are there currently any authorized community justice workers or certified community legal advocates in place now? And if so, how is the model working so far? Kip?
Yes, there are people in place around the state. And speaking of legal deserts, Mojave County, which is the 5th largest county in the United States, we're definitely a legal desert. We have attorneys that worked here, and then during COVID, they found they could appear remotely, and so they still work here, but they live all across the nation now. They don't live here in Mojave County anymore. Luckily, by remote appearance, they can still work here, but we struggle. We struggle to have enough attorneys to support everybody. So these, community legal advocates, these justice workers will be important for us. We do have I spoke with several of our judges. We have a lot of legal paraprofessionals that are working in our area. So they work with some of the local attorney firms, and they can do certain work, and they've been valuable to us. They come into court, they help represent some people. So there's a distinction between the two programs, and maybe Judge Thumma can highlight that, or I don't mean to give you work, Judge, but it's helpful, and we look forward to more of them coming. Like the judge said, La Paz County, Mojave, some of these more rural counties, we need some more of these workers. We're starting to see them now.
And Peter, to your question, to follow up on Kip's good overview, the legal advocates, the certified legal advocates, they've been in place actually in the housing stability and in a domestic violence pilots in place for several years in Arizona. The community justice work, they're the individuals that are not directly supervised by a lawyer, which, if you think about it, in some worlds would be the heavier lift than folks who are trained and working with community-based legal organizations who are supervised by lawyers. They're the newbies on the block, really. And the three, like I said, the three legal services corporation entities have banded together to get going there. But they exist in both groups for sure. The legal advocates and non-lawyer supervised are longer in history. And to your question, Peter, how many are there? To my view, they're not enough. But we hope that there'll be more and more and more. But they are in the field right now trying to help people most in need.
Do the community justice workers run up against the prohibition against offering legal advice? And how do you deal with that issue?
I am here to help on that, Peter. Actually, our Supreme Court is here to help, and it traces back, at the risk of getting a little historical, to kind of a historical accident. The unauthorized practice of law statute in Arizona needed to be reviewed every so often and then reenacted. And in the mid-1980s, to put it delicately, the Supreme Court and the legislature weren't on the same page. And so the UPL statute, the unauthorized practice of law statute, sunsetted. And we have not had an unauthorized practice of law statute in Arizona ever since. Now, the first sort of group that bubbled up was legal document preparers, right? And the bar struggled with this. I moved down here in '92, and it was we kept looking for initiatives to get the UPL statute back in place. It was not perceived as a happy day for the bar. But for regulatory reform and innovation, it turned out to be a godsend, Peter. So the document preparers came in place. The Supreme Court's reaction was to regulate them. And now there's something like 600 licensed document preparers in the state. There's a directory on the court's website. But what did that allow for? All sorts of innovation elsewhere. The paraprofessional program that Kip pointed out, setting apart paralegals, right, that have been a part of access to justice for an awfully long time. But then these community justice worker service delivery models that have been put in place as of March through a new provision of the Arizona Code of Judicial Administration. What it required was an amendment to the unauthorized practice of law rule that the court had. And the court amended that actually before the code section was put in place, because we asked them to nicely. And we'd done a lot of work trying to get a code section that we thought was pretty fair and balanced, and trying to communicate it broadly before we sought approval. And it went through without a negative vote. I was delighted by that, Peter. So in 49 of the other states, you might have a huge problem, although I've written about maybe why there's a way around that. If you have, at some point, the court needs to define what is and is not the practice of law. But in our state, we don't face an obstacle that many other states do, and our Supreme Court has embraced that as a way of seeking innovation, not just with the groups that we're talking about, but with retired lawyers, law professors, lawyers in other jurisdictions, lawyers in other countries, all sorts of opportunities to enhance the reach for those most in need.
Your committee has been working on this issue for over 10 years. What advice do you have for courts in other states that might be just embarking on this path? Kevin?
I think I would tell any court or any community really embarking on any problem is to find great partners, to find people who are committed and that also who can listen, that are there to humbly serve. And Arizona is so very fortunate in all levels. They are not afraid to take a risk. Their whole core and purpose is to help people achieve access to justice. So I think it'd be line yourself up with a wonderful team and you can accomplish so many things.
Kip?
I certainly would echo what Kevin said. Kevin and I both have been on the commission since it started. Again, getting the word out. There's annual reports that get pushed out. In the local level, when we meet with our local judges, I let them know what's going on. I send information out to the court administrators throughout the state of Arizona. But as Kevin said, most importantly, we got to connect with our local organizations, our local legal service providers, make sure we're working closely with them. Our local bar foundation, our local bar associations as well. We've done a lot of work with them. We do trainings with them. We invite them in. Almost every year, Judge Thumma comes down to one of our local bar meetings, and he'll talk about the work that's being done around the state. And that helps the local attorneys be more engaged, be more willing to offer services. So those are some of the keys. These webcasts, putting together these webcasts and all these videos that are available, those have been invaluable over the years. As legislation changes and new programs come into place, putting together some of these videos, working with our local law libraries, our self-helps. And then, as Kevin mentioned earlier, there's been a big push to get out to our community libraries. And they're doing a lot of training there now as well to help them understand how they can refer and gather information and then refer people back to the courts that maybe need a little more information. So reaching out, getting involved with the community has been very helpful.
Judge Thumma?
I can very feebly echo what Kip and Kevin have mentioned, and you can see just what a joy it is to work with Kip and Kevin and the other members of the commission on working with things that could overwhelm people, but it doesn't with our commission. First and last is communicate, right? Reach out, talk to people, learn, listen, ask the questions that you don't know the answer to, and try to, where you can, find common interests in moving forward together. I've thought about this kind of a lot, and it seems to me that the three focal points for access to justice is, if a person wants to help someone else, well, that's pretty easy. Anybody that I want to spend any time with wants to help somebody in need. The second thing, which narrows the herd a little bit, is that to get people to act. Not just to think about things, but to move on things. And then the third thing to me is to do that with a modest sense of urgency. I don't mean be frantic, but, hey, we need to move and we need to try something because by definition, the areas that we're focusing on aren't working well right now. So let's be strong enough to make mistakes. Let's learn from our mistakes. Let's, try to do the very best when we move forward, but to want to help, to act, and then to have a modest sense of urgency and look at deliverables to get concrete things that we can do to help others, recognizing we need to think big as well. But if we're not at the granular, at kind of the ground level, we're kind of just talking. And that's why it's such a joy to be a part of this commission, to see the incredible things, the miracles on a daily basis that commission members are doing.
A huge thank you to Judge Thumma, Dr. Ueg, and Kip Anderson for sharing their insights and wisdom today. Access to justice is a critical issue, one that affects us all now and will continue to affect us for years to come. We will undoubtedly return to this topic many times in the future. And to you, the dedicated court professionals tuning in, we appreciate your unwavering commitment to upholding access to justice as a core principle of our courts. Your dedication makes a real difference. Thank you. Join us on Tuesday, July 15th for another episode as we explore the pressing issues facing courts today. This has been the Court Leaders Advantage podcast series. I'm Pete Kiefer, and thanks for joining us today. Thanks for joining us today. The Court Leaders Advantage is a regular podcast series on courts and court administration. Today's episode will be available on our website, on the Court Leader website, on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, LinkedIn, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. Become part of the conversation. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, email us. Our address is podcasts@nacomnet.org. Did you hear an interesting comment by one of the panelists that you would like to listen to again, but you don't want to search the entire episode to find it? The additional resources section of the webpage has a question time marker sheet. Find the discussion question on the sheet, and next to it is the time that question was asked. You can quickly fast forward to that time and listen to the panelists' comments. Remember, if you don't have time to watch an episode, you can always listen to the audio version. Listen in your car or on the bus on your way to or from work. you never have to miss an episode. I'm Pete Kiefer, and on behalf of our guests, the Court Leader website, and the National Association for Court Management, thank you, and have a great day. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this episode are solely those of the host and the individual presenters. They do not necessarily represent the position of the National Association for Court Management.